Joe Truzman is with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Joe, thanks for being with us. He's in Portland, Oregon tonight. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as we mentioned, giving that address today, doing so in English, saying that Israel will not agree to a ceasefire, and then invoking the memories of 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Who is he talking to, and why is he invoking those memories?
Right. First, thank you for having me on. So what Israel is doing, and in this case, Prime Minister Netanyahu, he is signaling that Israel cannot live beside Hamas, especially after this October 7th attacks. So this is why we're seeing the ground war. This is why we're seeing airstrikes. And he's just reminding the public and the international community, this is going to be a long war, all right? This is not going to be something that's going to last a few weeks. Hamas is deeply embedded in Gaza, and not only in Gaza, actually, they're in Turkey, they're in Qatar, they are in the West Bank. So this is a long conflict between Israel and Hamas. But right now, as we see, Israel is focused on Gaza.
So, Drew, is Hamas getting a free pass, so to speak? I mean, after all, they massacred 1,400 Israelis, men, women, and children. They are one of the major reasons that people cannot flee to the south in Gaza, and they are at war with Israel. They are soldiers who don't wear uniforms and do use human shields. Are they getting a free pass from the international community that can only see the casualties of war and not necessarily the cause of war?
Right. A free pass, I'm not sure. However, they definitely are using the civilian population of Gaza as a human shield, as you said. So, for instance, they launch rockets from civilian infrastructure. They have tunnels under civilian infrastructure. They have tunnels underneath hospitals and other areas where civilians reside. So this isn't new. This has been an issue for many years. This is an issue that the Israelis have had to grapple with in previous conflicts. Now, also, I'd like to say that Hamas is suffering here as well. And what I mean by that is that they are losing commanders on the ground, and they're also losing leaders of the organization. Israel hasn't gotten to the top guys just yet, because that's going to take time, of course, but they are losing key members of their organization. So, but it is important for Hamas to keep the civilians in Gaza because, like I said before, they use them as a human shield because they know the Israelis aren't going to target the civilians directly. So, in essence, the civilians are an asset to Hamas.
Joe, is there an instance where we may be looking at the first social media war with no guardrails, in which sooner or later we're going to have to define war and an acceptable level of death when it comes to civilians in wartime? Is it 1? Is it 10? Is it 100, 1,000? Because the United Nations, for instance, saying that 18,802 civilians were killed, another 36,245 wounded between January 1st of 2014 and 31st of October in 2015. That was the U.S. war in Iraq. So are we now living in a different time when it comes to how we define and prosecute a war?
Yeah, well, you could say we do live in a different time. I've been tracking Hamas, specifically, rather, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict for almost 10 years now. And in 2014, there was a major war between Israel and Hamas. And then there was the internet was being used, or rather Hamas was using social media to publish a lot of propaganda on the internet. And we, over the years, 2018, 2020, 21, and now we're seeing more of the internet being used by, of course, by Hamas, by both sides, to publish information. And of course, now we're seeing the destruction that war causes, of course, right? We saw it especially on October 7th, Hamas members wearing GoPros, taking their cell phones and recording the atrocities that they committed. and then publishing it on the internet, on Telegram, on Twitter. So I think this is a new version of war on social media compared to previous years, because it's become, just because how graphic it's been since October 7th. So it's definitely possible, and I see this continuing to ramp up over the years.
Joe, is it because Israel is a Jewish state? And I bring that up to point out that there are conflicts going around on a worldwide basis. There is Yemen, there's Ethiopia, there's Congo that has been at war, I think, since the 1950s. I mean, there are wars and there are millions of people dying in wars, but only one conflict is really targeting people because of their faith. Is Israel the target of criticism because Israel is a Jewish state?
That's a very good question. I'll say this. Hamas and other Palestinian armed groups, including those that are backed by Iran, that are on Israel's borders, which is not a coincidence. You have groups like Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. There are Syrian groups that are backed by Iran. There's groups in the West Bank. And of course, there's Iraqi groups and the groups in Yemen, like the Houthis, for example. And they are attacking Israel because it's a Jewish state. They don't want it to exist. And this is Hamas's charter. They want to push Israel into, literally, destroy it.
Joe, I've only got 30 seconds left, but Benjamin Netanyahu invoked the Bible when he said that this was almost a biblical struggle. What then is the end game in Gaza and Israel?
So like they've been saying this whole time, like the Israelis have been saying, they want to destroy Hamas. They can't live with Hamas beside them anymore, especially after what happened on October 7th. And this has become a national tragedy for Israel. So their goal is to wipe Hamas or get rid of Hamas from Gaza. So I think this is the end game here, but it's going to take a long time.
Joe Truzman with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Joe, thanks for being with us tonight.